we will call the order of the meeting of the Parks Board on February 21st, 2024. The roll call, Catherine, do you begin, please?
Sure. Catherine Bishop, present.
McCrea Baker, present.
Tim Sprecher, present.
Mike Niesman, present.
All right, thank you. It is my understanding that Bernie will not be here this evening, and we'll talk about that a bit later in the agenda. Next item on the agenda, the Parks Board minutes, review and approval of the December 2023 minutes and the January 17th, 20. So let's take a look at the December 30th minutes.
20th, right?
Or 20th, I'm sorry, thank you, Mike. December 20th, 2 pages. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of December 20th?
I don't have any.
Catherine? None? Mike? No. Okay.
I wrote them, so I was hoping somebody would correct me on anything if they found it, so.
All right, good to know. All right, so the Parks Board minutes of December 20th, 2023 are accepted as written. May we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so moved by Mike, seconded by Catherine. Moving on to the minutes of January 17th, 2024. I believe all the guests and presenters were noted, and addresses and names are correct.
To the best we could do, yes.
Okay.
I think one of the names, I don't know if we need to get this nitpicky, but one of the names, Bob, it's listed as Gergis. I think it's Grigas.
It is Griggas.
Griggas.
That's correct.
Great, okay.
Thank you. It is very important. Somebody's name. Any other corrections or additions to the January 17th minutes as presented? If not,
I'll make a motion to accept it with the correction of the name as noted.
Second.
second. Do we have a motion to approve?
Oh.
Or, I mean,
Almost.
second, that was, and you seconded, I'm sorry. We already got that done. Thank you. So they are accepted as, and approved as noted with the change to Bob Grigas's name. All right, thank you very much. Moving on to the item number 4, Parks and Forestry Director's Report, Eric Schneider. Are you ready, Eric?
All right, so you guys have been provided my director's report. What I'll do is I'll focus on a couple things that I'd like to highlight, and then I'll open up the floor to questions for all of you folks. Regarding forestry, we have done substantial pruning this year. It seems like each year that we actually do have more mild winters, we're able to actually complete much more pruning, which is fantastic. Previously, the operations were about 6 years on average cycle pruning. I don't believe that was actually the case as far as completion reports, but we have been making substantial progress as far as pruning on all of the designated areas. Now, our goal currently is stump grinding. We have to complete stump grinding prior to the end of March as we go into the tree planting portion of our forestry department in early April. So our goal is to have all of our stumps ground from the previous removal season by the end of March, which we've already begun this week. We have been awarded our 31st consecutive year of Tree City USA recognition. The Growth Award that I applied for, which would be the first time the city of Lake Mills has applied for this
I'm gonna
award.
move over closer. I just put my hearing aids in.
That's okay, that's okay.
So I'll come over closer. My mistake. Sorry. Sorry.
No, you're okay.
This is slow. There we go. Thanks. Thank you.
All right. So we have been awarded the 31st consecutive year of our Tree City USA recognition, but our Growth Award is still under review. That requires additional review from the Tree City USA Board of Review. So I'm definitely hoping that we have our first received Growth Award for the city this year. I mentioned to Mike previously, we have our tree service requests on our website. There was a substantial uptick in those tree service requests of residents using that service when it was first enacted, and then somewhat of a die-off of that actual service as kind of that first bump of enactment kind of implemented. But with more people being outside, given the mild weather, we've had a pretty substantial uptick as far as people actually completing tree service requests, of which my arborists have been going out and actually completing starting right now. The WAA-ISA annual conference in Green Bay is going to be attended starting Sunday of this weekend by multiple staff members who are arborist certified and or attempting to be arborist certified.
I'm sorry, what does that WAA stand for?
That is Wisconsin Arborist Association, and ISA is International Society of Arboriculture.
International Study of Agriculture, thanks.
Arboriculture.
Arboriculture. Good word.
Specific to parks, some of the things that I would like to touch on are specifically in Commons Park. Staff did substantial efforts to complete and install the ice rinks in Commons Park and Sandy Beach. This was the quickest turnaround that they've been able to do so because we had substantial cold temperatures, and the gentleman working those sections worked absolutely around the clock for approximately 5 days to install those ice rinks. So very much props to my staff for working around the clock to get them up, despite them only being in place for 5 days. I did, however, receive numerous compliments from residents of, even though it was kind of a defeated purpose, I suppose you could, for the most part, we knew they were going to melt. The fact that we were able to install them was very much appreciated by a lot of folks in the community. So that is something, if we are able to do it, given the environmental concerns, we will continue to do that every year because I definitely think it is a beneficial part of our community. Specifically for Commons Park, Legendary Lake Mills has hired a new farmers market coordinator. That is Savannah Forbeck. She and I have been working very closely to make some fairly substantial changes to the farmers market layout in Commons Park for this year. This is absolutely her event. She is the market coordinator. However, I am kind of the liaison for the city for her to implement the market within Commons Park. She's asked for some of my suggestions, the building inspector, as well as the police chief's interpretation and input for some of her plans for the farmers market. But by far, her and I have worked very closely together. It is currently proposed to have vendors for the farmers market use the newly installed internal sidewalk within the park. That goal here is to have increased educational and entertainment, I suppose, presentations, music, et cetera, or live music in the Commons Park Band Shelter. Our goal here is to not just to encourage vending, but to encourage people to remain downtown, participate in the park, take advantage of the park, and hopefully retain people in the downtown community during that event. And we would love to provide entertainment to do that. That being said, we do think the internal sidewalk will provide a good opportunity for vendors and residents alike to go along that path. The only difficulty here is unloading the materials for the vendors themselves. We will have designated unloading spots for vendors, as well as carts available for these people, and Legendary Lake Mills has been doing a very good job to do that. And I am very much excited for the new layout of the farmers market and for the entertainment stuff that's going to be down in Commons Park this summer.
Question, who is the new coordinator?
That is Savannah Forbeck.
Savannah?
Forbeck. Forbeck.
Thanks.
And Eric, are those plans and layout on the city website for the
I don't
Commons
believe
Park?
they're going to be on the city website. They will be on the legendary Lake Mills website because it's their sponsored event.
Okay.
They do very, very good social media presence and promoting for it. So it's something that the city would be able to cross-post and post on their website as well. But one of the things they absolutely excel at is their social media outreach, and they've been doing a very good job so far. We are going to be issuing, I helped author an address to both vendors and residents alike for some of the changes that are going to be happening this summer regarding the layout of the market, and that should be published approximately in 2 weeks or so.
In 2 weeks.
Yep. Sandy Beach, the biggest development here at Sandy Beach is Thrive Architects, one of the two architect firms that were proposed for the Sandy Beach restaurant project, was selected by City Council to move forward through the actual design and implementation process. Currently, at this point, city staff and Thrive Architects are going through contractual reviews as far as what their contract is going to be for moving forward with this project. Some of the noteworthy things that they have designed, or at least the designated architect for this, is Water Street Brewery in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. That was one of the things that they absolutely highlighted, at least in their presentation. But if any of you would like to reference some of their projects that Thrive Architects have worked on, that is on the February 6th City Council meeting, and they showed some photographs, some design aspects of some of the structures that they have done before. So I absolutely feel very confident in Thrive Architects. I felt very confident in both of the submitters through the RFP. They both had very substantial resumes, and so far they've been very good communicators through this process throughout the last couple weeks. So I'm looking to see when we can advance forward after looking at the actual contract review. The last biggest thing probably is dredging of the Mill Pond Channel did start yesterday. It was probably the last kind of window or time frame that we were able to do so, given the conditions and the colder temperatures in the morning, to minimize the amount of actual erosion or potential equipment operation damage on the grounds. I think we sneaked by in the nick of time with today progressing almost near 60 degrees. But as of noon today, operation of 1 day and a half, that dredging operation is complete. So dredging is complete. At this point, we basically have the remediation efforts, the cleanup efforts, et cetera, for the actual equipment operation that commences now. Myself and staff are going to be pulling the turbidity barriers and letting some of that silt and sediment, et cetera, settle within the channel before we remove those turbidity barriers. So probably early next week, we're looking to actually pull those barriers out, remove some of the displaced debris that is in the channel, and complete the cleanup procedures throughout the channel. Potentially next week, weather permitting.
Question?
Yes, sir?
Was most of the sediment sand? Was that your impression?
A lot of it, substantial amount was, yes.
Okay.
Substantial amount was. I was expecting to see more of muck, mud, very, very wet debris. I was shocked to see how dry the debris was that was actually being removed. We did have street cleaning implements planned, basically. We're going to be operating a street sweeper between every truck that came out of that channel to create. We were expecting substantial amounts of water and mud to be on location, but there was very, very minimal amounts. So I was surprised to see how dry that material was. I expect the majority of it, vast majority of it, was sand. Also, I think we pulled up about 20 or 30 flip-flops that were mismatched, so there was that. We will see. Two iPhones, one level, quite a bit of sand, sandcastle tools, and very many flip-flops were pulled from the channel. So we're going to let that settle. Our goal here is to prevent sand, sediment, et cetera, from entering the mill pond itself. That's the whole purpose of these turbidity barriers. It's very cloudy right now just because the amount of disturbance that happened in the channel. So once that settles, we'll pull those barriers out. So that being said, does anyone have any specific questions regarding the director's report?
I have a question. Eric, when I looked at the site this evening, of course, you can't see the depth of the newly dredged because of the turbidity. But as with just outside the barriers, you can see the sand, and I is that it's no more than a foot, maybe a foot and a half of depth there between the concrete barrier and the lake bed itself?
Near the turbidity barrier, there was difficulty in reaching, so there was I suppose, a threshold that they were able to reach with the excavator itself. The majority of the channel was dredged to 4-foot depth, though.
Okay, so going forward, and I apologize for not either reading this or seeing this, is there a plan to put some sort of wing dam or something like that from the channel out to prevent that much sand either sliding into the channel again or getting flowed into the channel?
So in the 2023 request process and 2024 approval process for the capital improvement projects, the Bartles Beach seawall was approved in that funding, so we're in design process right now. Both Jefferson County Land and Water Conservation Department, so that would be Colton and Patricia and myself, as well as DATCAP representatives, which is surprising that the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection has oversight in some of these projects. That is very surprising to me, but they do. And we discussed what we can do to prevent that sand from entering the channel itself. It is very obvious that that sand is from Bartles Beach, from the sand washing along that seawall and going through the channel of flow. It is, in my opinion, irrefutable. It is washing through that area. What we can do to actually do it, I think, will be answered in the design process of the actual seawall build. So I don't know what that process looks like, but it has been considered as a design element in the Bartles Beach seawall project.
And the follow-up question to that is, where is the design blueprints, renderings of what it's going to look like in various renditions?
Not completed yet, in progress.
Any timeline as to when that may be available for the public view?
As soon as it's completed, I'm not really quite sure when that will be. What I'm trying to do is complete all of our bidding and design documents as soon as possible in this actual calendar year, because we do have kind of the fiscal deadline with capital improvement projects. This one is kind of a unique example because we will have permitting requirements that we need to abide to. So we will be subject to the actual permit requirements, very similar to where we were with the channel. I do think these ones will be much more involved because of the scope of the project. So even though we have the funds secured, we're going through the design process, it'll be subject to the approval process from the DNR for those permits. But I would expect, or at least hope, that prior to summer, we will be complete with the design process and moving forward with the bidding process.
Would you be able to comment on your expertise and other experts as to the viability of the current concrete wall that seems to be lining the channel to a certain point and then going south? Is that, and that's cracked? I mean, it's cracked in a number of places.
That will be replaced within the project as well. So not the Ferry Drive section. If we're specifically referencing the section with that pedestrian bridge or that half-circle pedestrian bridge, those sections will be replaced. So that bridge will have to be removed, replaced once that section is completed, repoured, reformed, etc. But that bridge will be reinstalled when that process basically commences. But the section that is failing underneath, you can see much clearly now that we removed a lot of the invasive woody species that were on that south end of the channel. You can see that actual pedestrian platform, I suppose you could call it, on the park side of that bridge. The footings are in pretty terrible shape. I would say failing condition currently, and that section will be replaced. So any failing infrastructure will be replaced. The proposed length is 80 feet approximately. That's starting along the actual wall itself. So 80 foot will be the lakefront sections, but that section where that actual platform is will be within the scope of the project.
Okay, thank you.
It is kind of alarming to see the amount of erosion that was underneath the footings.
Eric, did we retain any samples of the dredged material, or do we have any other documentation for city records for proof later down the line to the DNR or other entities of what the material was?
We have all the material on hand and
Okay.
available. So
Fantastic.
we did have to remove it from site. We have a designated dumping location for it. It is all secure as far as the material that was removed. It will be basically used as fill material along some point, but there will be samples that can be collected as well. Honestly, out of pure curiosity of my own, I would like to collect some of the samples, but that material will be available if we'd like to at least collect samples.
Okay, you can see my concern in future years. The DNR is like, we don't know if it's sand, prove it, you know. Whereas I think it's pretty clear to a lot of us that this is sand coming in from our beaches, not native material.
Yes, there is native material. There absolutely is. There's decaying vegetation, there's silt, there's sediment, etc. I would say the majority is sand, but there absolutely is native vegetation, decay, etc., and silt that was in there. A lot of zebra mussel refuse stuff as well, but I would say pretty irrefutably there was a lot of sand that washed into the mouth of the channel itself.
Any other questions to Eric? All right, if not, go to the item number 5 on the agenda, public comments, including emails.
We want to jump right to the one that we got right after the last meeting from Mr. Temperley.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So I think from that email, after I read it, I think there's maybe some confusion about what the purpose of what we called, what exactly did we call it?
Public hearing.
Public hearing. Maybe we should have called it, solicitation of public comments or something.
No, I mean, I'm just gonna stop you. It was noticed as a public hearing, and so that's what it was. And that's what I told Mr. Templey in an email as well.
Okay. Did you respond to?
I did, yes.
But yeah, and then I guess another thing I want to highlight, to be frank, I mean, I should find it here. One of his concerns was, sorry, I have to find it. Was that he didn't consider it a hearing and that it often raises more questions. To be honest, he gave his testimony and didn't listen to any other testimony. He left directly after giving his testimony, so he didn't hear that the 7 or 8 people after him, I guess, generally sounded like were supportive of the, improvements to the mill pond.
Did we all get a copy of that email, or
I did get a email from Mr. Templey. I don't know if I was BCC'd or if we were all copied, but the content sounded familiar to what Mr. Baker was
I
saying.
may just have, you want to just forward it to me sometime?
Sure.
It looks like sent to myself, Tim Sprecher, Mike Nessman, and Catherine, and Eric too.
Mr. Schreiner, could you just get a copy of that to Mr. Nessman? Thank you.
Yes.
And so then, I guess this did lead to, a question. A lot of his concerns were about, large part of it is he's looking for a referendum, was my understanding from the email. That seems outside of the scope of what the city council has requested of us. I'm not sure if others agree with that statement or not. I think obviously the financial and the final approval comes from city council, and we were tasked with giving them a recommendation. So I don't know if that is a correct way of understanding it, that a lot of his concerns should be targeted towards city council rather than us on the Parks Board.
Yeah, if I may, a potential referendum would not be at the discretion of Parks Board. So I wouldn't really consider that to be within your scope at all, regardless of the city council city council order at all. But we do have to consider, at least Parks Board does have to consider some financial impacts that happen with the actual development of the mill pond, but specifically a referendum, that wouldn't be within the scope of Parks Board.
Thank you, McCrea. Catherine, any other comments regarding the emails or other information that has been brought forward?
Sure. So I did receive that same email, and McCrea, I apologize to have cut you off a little bit, but I did respond, and since my emails are public record, I'll say it here. I did let Mr. Temperley know that I believe a public hearing was in fact held as it was noticed on the agenda, and also I think it was also publicized in the newspaper. And I also let him know, to Mr. Schreiner's point, that I believed the referendum issue was going to have to be discussed at the council level in consultation with city staff and particularly the city attorney. So that was my response back to that very generally. I think that should cover those issues. I think if this board ends up making recommendations that have significant expenditures, Mr. Daly and the city attorney will have to advise the council on if a referendum is required per our city ordinances.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I thought at the beginning of the meeting, after the question was brought up, I think Mr. Daly did say what the intent was and such, so I thought that was clarified before we began. And so, but that's to be noted that we'll make sure that we have our names or such clear. But I think as everyone has brought up and by
Question, so do we need to attach a copy of that email in your response to the minutes? No. Okay, good.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
Only other public comment that I've gotten from, I guess, people who know I'm on the Parks Board is when we're going to make a decision about the mill pond. And I guess I'm not really providing an answer, but.
Yes, and I think that's a good response. What I've been responding to is we're following the City Council Resolution 2341A and its process, and they're welcome to look at that. But at this point, I think we are making progress. But if I remember right, we are to make the final proposal by June of this year. So I think we're doing fine. But thank you for that. Mike?
I had questions about, it seemed to me a key element of the whole question of dredging the mill pond was how long would it last? It's one thing to spend X amount of money for 5 years. It's different if it's only good for 1 year or 100 years. And we talked about that, so we needed data, I thought, on the channel, or not the channel depth, the depth of the mill pond, and I don't know that we really have that. I did reach out to Jefferson County, and they sent me a little what they had, which were some spot observations, and I will forward to all you folks. But it goes back maybe 5 years. And then I also reached out to a limnologist and just told him briefly he's related to someone who lives very near the mill pond.
Jen, sorry to interrupt. Can you describe that term? What was the term or their profession?
Limnologist? It's a wonderful word. Someone who is a specialist in fresh water, as compared to an oceanographer or aquatic engineer.
Thank you for teaching me something today, Mike.
You're welcome. Maybe I'll remember it myself. But he was saying that, I just said, look, this is our question. Do you have any idea if you or anybody else could give us information? There's a lot of confounding variables, obviously. Depth of the water, wind, blah, 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 blah. And he basically said he had no idea, but he was proceeding from the assumption that it's mostly weeds and organic sediment. And so I just went back to him and said, well, I think it might be more sand. So I'll go back to him again on that and just say, if that were the case, could you possibly give us more? Is there an estimate that can be done, or is it really one of those things you just have to wait and see? So.
If I may, we recently have new aerial photography available for the city of Lake Mills that we have for our GIS imagery. So when I reference the actual sand, you can see that sand entering the mill pond. It's very visible on those aerial photographs. However, it does end just beyond the actual Ferry Drive culvert. You can see it very visibly in that section. Now, I'm not saying that there hasn't been sand infiltrated further, but it is visible to have an endpoint on the aerial itself. So I'm sure, I'm positive sand is a portion of actual buildup within the mill pond, but to what extent, I'm not quite exactly sure, but it is visible as far as an endpoint beyond the Ferry Drive culvert. What I can do is I can provide aerial imagery photographs of those to you guys. It is I don't know if it's a publicly available image overlay or if it's specifically for city staff, but I at least can provide that for you.
The other thing we could look at, I think Patricia talked about them doing some samples, didn't they, sediment samples some time back, and I don't remember if they commented on the composition of those samples. In other words, if it was mostly sand or not. I'll go back and I can ask her that. Might be of value. Anyway, it's interesting.
So one, I guess, comment about people asking how long it's going to last. I mean, I don't think we probably don't have a good estimate. There's probably not a good calculation for determining that. But I think we can look back at, we know in recent history, at least the last 40 years, I guess we're pretty certain there hasn't been anything done. So I'm not sure if conditions are changing on the lake that are therefore leading to more buildup in the mill pond. But I think just looking back, I'm hopeful that if it is dredged, that it would last for a significant amount of time.
Going back to the sand that's used on Bartles Beach, and that's where we're conjecturing most of the sand is coming from, the amount that's on there. The amount of size of the grains of the sand that's there, I'm going to conjecture is going to be smaller than the particulate that's on the new sand.
That is correct, yes.
And the new sand was new, meaning larger particulate, less movement. That process began when?
2021.
So that's been a 3-year.
Yep, and it has not been an annual installation. It has been dumped twice, once in 2021 and once in 2023. Before it was an annual occurrence, now it is an as-needed basis. So I do hopefully see that there will be some form of improvement in eliminating erosion and actual movement of that sand off the beach. I think movement of the sand off the beach is inevitable. It is a beach and there is significant runoff with the actual degree and slope of the beach itself. But mitigation methods are at least being researched at this point for that actual seawall. I definitely would like to go back to my statement with the actual sand that washed underneath the Ferry Street culvert or Ferry Drive culvert. I think the majority, looking at the aerials at least, there's a very distinct line between what seems to be sand and what seems to be silt. Sand is very bright when it shows up on the aerial, and silt is very dark when it shows up on the aerial, and there's a very stark difference between those sections that you can see in the aerial imagery. And the vast majority that's in the mill pond seems to be not sand, but you can see sand infiltrating the mill pond minimally beyond the Ferry Street Bridge itself. So I think that'll provide kind of a good scope of understanding what may be sand, what may not be sand, if those aerial imagery or aerial images are provided.
And I'm wondering if someone like Colton from the Jefferson County could maybe do a sample of from the Bartles Beach and 5-10 yards out, see how much of the new sand has moved, and to the point where do we find where it has stopped moving. And going back to Catherine's comment, if we could take some samples of the sand that's there, that was taken out, and its size as compared to the new sand, to see if it is, I'm going to assume it's moving, but it's not going to be moving at the same rate, because I would guess it would settle down much more quickly than the finer sand.
Sure.
Again, that's just conjecture on my part. I'd like to have someone that's knowledgeable of it.
I was going to say, out of the sake of curiosity purely, I would like to know that. I would like to see that the efforts that are trying to reduce the amount of erosion are actually worthwhile. So I think that's absolutely beneficial. I'll kind of play the city staff role here and say if we would like to have Jefferson County involved in further sampling, research, et cetera, for the mill pond itself, we should state that specifically within a recommendation to city council, what we would like to see advancing in this progress. So what it is that they need to test, I'm not quite sure, but we should include it specifically as a recommendation if that's what you would like to do within the city council review.
Again, that's my bias. I just would like to have information that we're dealing with. Are the efforts working? And if not, then what? But I don't think anybody wants to make it where there's no sand on the beach. So that's also something to be considered. But yeah, if we can draft some sort of proposal or some idea to have that go forward, I would be for that. So thank you, Eric. Any other public comments? I did have a public comment that the people, a couple of people commented how nice the park was and how the lights were so nice, and that they thought the efforts around the Knickerbocker Festival were well done, given all the challenges. So kudos to the staff and to Lake Mills and such, so thank you for that.
If I may add, that was a fairly substantial undertaking from Legendary Lake Mills as well. A plan B was in place. What we tried to do, or at least what they tried to do, is continue with their plan A as long as possible until public safety concerns became an aspect as far as going out onto the lake. To their credit, they were still able to pull off some of the children's games that happen in town. We weren't able to do them in the park because it was so saturated, but definitely very big kudos and props to Legendary Lake Mills, especially parks cleanup. I reiterated that at the Legendary Lake Mills board meeting. Very commonly, we have special events that happens in the park. Inevitably, it requires more cleanup of my staff in those parks after those events. But especially with this Knickerbocker, Legendary Lake Mills did a fantastic job cleaning up all the actual materials for the special event itself. So they did great.
Yes, they did. Thank you. And that was noticed by the public. So if no other comments, we will go to item number 6, new business. A, decision on the nomination of McCrea Baker to interim vice chair to serve the vacant May 2023 to April 2024 term.
One question there.
Too late.
May 2023, that was, is that just a yearly appointment of who's vice chair?
That is my understanding.
Okay. So then are we going to vote again on this in May of this year?
That is my understanding,
Right.
yes.
Short gig.
You do it well. You can't goof up too much of the
Trial
staff.
period, and run while you still can if you don't like it.
Sic transit gloria.
Now you got to define, you got to translate that Latin to,
Thus, how fleeting is fame.
there you have it.
And all sorts of new words.
That's right. All sorts of languages too.
Mr. Sprecher, do you want a motion to approve your nomination?
I would like one, yes, please.
Okay, so I move to approve the chair's nomination of McCrea Baker to interim vice chair to serve in the vacant position from May 2023 to April 2024.
I second it.
A vote?
Duh.
All done? Oh, good. You voted too, McCrea. I think so. It is passed. McCrea is now the interim vice chair to serve until April 24th, or April 2024. Thank you. Congratulations, McCrea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going to be discussion review on the public's 3-minute comments pursuant to City Council Resolution 2341A regarding the 2018 Strand feasibility study and the 2023 opinion of probable construction cost of mill pond dredging. So I think we heard a little bit of this, that we've had most of the people that spoke at the hearing were in favor of dredging.
I guess, maybe we didn't ask that question specifically, but it's, I mean, I guess that's kind of the understanding I got. People were looking for improvements that, I feel like the most general theme was the mill pond had been X, and now it's filled with weeds, boats can't use it, and people were looking to kind of get things back to how they had been historically.
I see kind of three issues here, and I don't know if all of them were specifically addressed in the public comments, but the way I really see it breaking down is, one is, do we dredge, yes or no, and the cost. Two is there vegetation mitigation that can be done with the least amount of environmental impact, negative. The second one would be, is there any vegetation mitigation that can be done with the least amount of negative environmental impact? I've heard that here and there being an issue. The third one is one that has not really been addressed at this board, but is something that the city council has been looking at extensively, and that's water levels. If the Rock Lake water levels were to stabilize or even go back up a little bit, that would also improve the navigability of the mill pond. So it's not something that's necessarily in front of this board in terms of the mill pond study and the resolution that we were tasked to investigate, but it is something that will possibly compound the effects of dredging if that were to be done and recommended by this board.
Thank you, Catherine. The other thought that came to mind is that it seemed that most of the people, as has been stated, wanted it to be as better than it is and back to where it was. I did not hear and have not heard anyone really pushing for the high end of the Strand report of the piers and the raising the bridge and such, as far as the what they wanted is, can I get my boat in and out? Can I launch my boat? And can I get through the channel? Were to me, the three ones when it came to the dredging itself. And the other one that we've heard, even prior to the comment, was protection of the, flora and fauna in the mill pond. So we don't want to make it that it's a barren, cement pond sort of a thing. They wanted it. So that was the thing. But I guess my biggest thing is they want to make sure they can use their boats and they can use the mill pond. And the other things were more, I didn't hear anybody really pressing for that. Eric, you had a question?
Yes, I do believe, I do agree with you. I think the one exception would be there was the business owner and operator of Sunshine Brewery that did participate in the public hearing. I would have to look back at the actual meeting itself regarding his specific comments, but I do know that he commented that he was in favor of the potential access or additional access to downtown via boat traffic to his business specifically. But I don't know if he specifically brought up long-term boat lifts, permanent installation of piers, et cetera. But I do know that one business owner did at least comment at public hearing.
Thank you. Yeah. And Catherine?
One thing I'm not clear on, so those comments tend to be geared toward bringing in larger motorized boat access and docks for that. Is there dock access for kayaks and canoes and those smaller boats to come up and dock in the mill pond and get out and go to downtown? Is there anything like that?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
Now, it's not designated non-motorized access. My goal here is to kind of eliminate the potential, I suppose, debacle between motorboat access and non-motorized access. I like to kind of delineate those two separately. But we do have a double pier, single lane boat launch at the mill pond. I would say that is accessible to kayak and canoers to both enter the water and exit the water from that point currently.
Sure.
I think there's improvements that can be done, absolutely, but I would say that access does currently exist at the mill pond.
So that's one option. I know, I believe very, very small motorized boats can get through the channel. Just even giving those small boats access to dock rather than having to, like, if you come from across the lake, you should be able to come into the mill pond, dock if you're a very small boat, and that alleviates the need and the discussion for getting a pontoon boat through and then having to do a ferry reconstruction of the culvert in that bridge, but you could still allow some of those other recreational people and motorboats through and then give them that downtown access. It seems like a way to meet in the middle a little bit if you could put in some smaller docks and not have to have a pontoon dock or something.
That's very good point. I would say, let me, I suppose, provide some clarification as well. The two piers that we have down there are for the purpose of launching and retrieving watercraft only. They're not for long-term docking. And I'm not referring to long-term as annual or monthly, et cetera. I mean, I would say that long-term would be at any point to where the operator, majority of the people exit the watercraft, leave it for an extended period of time and re-enter. They're purely for the launching and retrieval of that watercraft. So I would say that we do not have long-term docking available at the mill pond currently.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
A question, did you say that the mill pond is designated as non-motor boat access? Or did I
No,
mistake?
it's not delineated separately between
It's not,
motorized and
okay, good.
non-motorized. No, both are accessible to, or allowed within the mill pond itself.
Okay.
I think I don't have the Strand report directly in front of me right now, but for us to, I guess, fully see the economic benefits of, having access, recreational access and docks in get access to downtown, I do think if only small boats are able to get through the channel and through the culvert, that's generally, I think, smaller boats are going to be like fishing boats. Whereas to promote use of the docking and businesses downtown from people who may be out of state, out of town, I do think that it probably would be the pontoon type boats that would need to get down there. I'm not sure if there'd be nearly as much economic benefit to just allowing small fishing boats through. So I think to fully utilize or to fully see the benefit outlined in the Strand report to the economic boost to businesses downtown, there would have to be, the full improvement plan.
I think you could do even a two-phase approach because that full improvement plan that you are talking about, I mean, really needs to be like a long-range 20-year plan, in terms of gearing up for the city to spend that type of money. The city has I'm not saying that couldn't be important, but the city has a lot of projects that we are contemplating, and how do you start racking and stacking them? And so when I say a two-tier project, I mean, first tier would be docks that would allow maybe jet skis, those very small motorized boats that already come through, allow them to dock and then go downtown. And if there's a documented economic benefit to that, then you have justification to move forward with in a long-range plan, adding to the infrastructure there.
And looking at the access to the lake, and specifically to Sunshine Brewery, that's, I'm going to conjecture, is maybe 100 yards from where the boat launch is to where the Sunshine Brewery property line would be. And I don't know what the rules are, but I would think that Sunshine Brewery could put their own docks in on the mill pond if, they requested a permit or something like that. Again, I don't know that. And looking at this one of the overhead shots of the depth of the mill pond, in that you could maybe consider putting like a fishing pier and outlets for the people that use that, because that is used quite a bit in the spring and such for fishing off the edge between the boat launch north along that north end of the right-of-way there. So those are some things I think should definitely be considered, that there's better access, better parking, better, fishing from a pier sort of a thing. But I would also say that we could maybe work with the business owners such as Sunshine Brewery if they, or the VFW, to see if they would have any interest in some sort of private docking mechanisms.
Did you have something on that, Eric?
Yeah, the first thing I was going to say, it absolutely depends on the actual amount of owned shoreline by those businesses as well. I know the Legion Post 67 does have some shoreline ownership. That's where the actual fishing pier, or I suppose, I kind of designate the difference between a shoreline fishing pad or a pier. A pier would actually be within the water itself. But the Post 67 does have that fishing pad on there. Perhaps there could be some potential improvements to that if there could be actual boat access improved on their lakefront property. I think that would be an option, but there absolutely is a point to where the city property does start and end within there, and if we are potentially proposing a recommendation to see if local businesses could supplement their own actual traffic to their businesses through boat traffic, I think we should make it pretty explicitly stated in there, is just my thought.
Craig, you said that the VFW has a
The-
pad for fishing, but not a dock.
Post 67 does have shoreline fishing access via a fishing pad. They do not have actual boat access or docks on their location.
It's sort of that raised decking right behind the view.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, that's what, okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So I think it's a very good point. I think that, that could absolutely be researched to see if docking opportunities could be available to local businesses. How that works permitting wise, what is permitted, what's accessible to there, I wouldn't be able to answer that right now.
Can I speak on this point? I think, nobody quote me, it's either the American Legion or the VFW down in Fort Atkinson on the river there. I'm pretty sure there are boat docks there that lead right up to their building. I do not know if that would be City of Fort Atkinson docks or if those are that entity's docks, but that would be an interesting, just not a case study, but point of reference for how that's done.
In previous positions in my employment, I was involved in some of the permitting aspects for those. Who they belong to, I'm not quite sure, whether it's the city or the actual Legion or VFW itself. But there are actual locations for boats to pull up. I don't know if long-term mooring is available. That I'm not quite sure, but I do know it's an opportunity for people to both board and exit their boats itself. But there is an opportunity for boats to pull up at that, so.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder who owns that there and how the city worked it out.
And this is my experience, they do get quite a bit of use, the one down at the American Legion or VFW post on the Rock River there. The other thing that we are also considering is going back to the comment that right now, boats that don't have a high canopy or a great width, most of them can get through the channel right now, as long as you bring your tiller up, as long as the water's deep enough. But I think the width and height of the current state is enough for a number of regular-sized fishing boats or kayaks, canoes, all those can use that. Pontoons, no. The other thing that wasn't added to our comment, besides the Sunshine Brewery wanting better access for pontoons and people, is that the fire department would like quicker access, direct access to Rock Lake, and that was noted in one of our previous meetings. But to my knowledge, we didn't go any farther as finding out what the costs were, what the grants might be for said changes to the bridge so they could have access to their water boat or airboat.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, because the other thing is, if in fact the lake levels do go up, I remember about 4 years ago, the hue and cry was nobody could get under the bridge because the water was too high. And so you had to duck and all. So it's as usual, the thigh bone's connected to the knee bone, and you change one thing and you've got to change something else.
If I could make a comment, I would say probably the most important aspect or involvement for the fire department itself, even though having a permanent boat lift or boat storage or access on the water is important, the most important thing is the actual Ferry Street or Ferry Drive portion of that project. Without that portion being addressed or changed for watercraft to enter underneath the Ferry Drive Bridge, there is not fire department access via the mill pond to Rock Lake. So addressing the Ferry Street Bridge is an absolute necessity if there is going to be fire department response from the mill pond. Whether there is going to be permanent boat storage similar to what we have with the Township Police Department at Sandy Beach, I think that is a secondary discussion. And I know having a boat on the water would absolutely increase their response time substantially, but they can't access Rock Lake without Ferry Drive being addressed.
Any other discussion, review of the public comments? All right, if not, let's move to item C, 6C, discussion recommendations on the next steps regarding fulfilling City Council Resolution 23-41A.
Eric, did you, I think you maybe mentioned at a previous meeting, you had, we're going to compile some updated history from folks that had sent you some photos or something?
Yep, absolutely. So what I have done is forward those to the city manager as well. I've basically started like a continued file folder. I've had multiple residents reach out to me, one very much specifically that has provided substantial amount of historical photos, which is great. If they're not currently on an updated agenda or attachment section of the historical presentation meeting of the Parks Board, I apologize. What we were intending to do is basically have supplemental photos attached to that meeting. If they're not there, I can send them to you individually. So if you could confirm, actually, if not, I'll send them out because I do have them all compiled within a folder. I would like to publicly state Ann Buchanan on West Lake Street has been a substantial help in providing documents and understanding for some historical photos and representation. Andy Palmer has also provided photos as well, but there have been multiple other residences provided photos that have been quite a bit of help. So if you have not yet seen those, I will share them with you to compare. In my opinion, probably some of the most applicable ones would be photos from the 70s. Just seeing those photos, it's kind of easy. When you look at photos from the early 1900s, it's hard to tell where things currently lie in place to how they are now. So it's very hard to put that scope in understanding. But the photos from the 1970s, it's very easy to tell you were at this point on Veterans Lane or you're on this point on West Lake Street. So those photos from the 70s are actually very beneficial to see what it looks like now versus previous.
I'm sorry, so the photos are available online or something? No.
I may ask if someone could actually confirm that was the intent, to actually upload them to the agenda.
On the February 20, like this meeting's agenda, or?
They would be attached to the meeting of which the historical presentation was. If they're not uploaded there, I do apologize. They will be publicly available, but that was the intent, to attach them as a supplemental document to that presentation. Yep, so if they're not currently attached, I will share them with you and then do so.
Well, I can just say we will investigate and they will be made available.
Eric, I'm looking now, I see your past, present, and future slides. I'm not seeing a document that looks like it's different or new. There's Lake Mills Fire Department current and potential lake response times, updated 12/19, the channel as per OPCC, and then the OPPC.
Okay, so what we'll do then is that I have them all basically scanned. There are multiple photos within one page, and I'll have them uploaded as a supplemental document, and I will send them all to you individually. If you would like, I can grab some for you. I do have them on hand and easily available currently. If you would like to take a look at some, that would not be an inconvenience to me.
My recommendation actually to attach them to his report for the next meeting. Can we do it, to attach them as part of your report for the next meeting? Is that okay? It doesn't have to be a separate agenda item, but that can.
Yep, absolutely. That's just fine. I can also provide them afterwards this meeting and then make them publicly available, whichever you'd prefer, but That works for me.
I think both would be good. I think, as Catherine says, attach them to the agenda for next meeting, and also, if you have them here, we could look at them so we're prepared for that on the agenda for the next meeting. So thank you. The other thing I would like to recommend on the next step is to take a look at the memo that I was forwarded by Mike, and I don't know who's forwarded to Mike from. It was to the city council, from the city manager, Steve Wilkie, dated February 15th, 2018, for the Mill Pond recommendations. And the memo that I have is one that was annotated by Patricia Cicero regarding some of the comments that Steve made to the council, and some other data that were then added by Patricia. So I would like to have us take a look at that memo and Patricia's annotations and discuss that as far as part of the, the ongoing decisions on the Mill Pond project. So there's a number of things, topographic documents and everything else in that report. And again, that's dated from 2018, which is again a follow-up to the Strand report. And specifically, and there is a mention, we said we don't know when the Mill Pond was dredged last. In that, I believe it says 1992. But I don't believe it says to a depth. It just says it was dredged. So whatever that means, as far as the detail and where we could get that, so.
Is that public record?
The
don't
question
believe so
is it public record? I'm
not quite sure. At this point, if it's a memo that was attached to a city council agenda, I would assume that it was actual public record. Now, the correspondence between Patricia Cicero and others, I'm not quite sure if that's public record. You provided them, Mike. If we want to discuss them as like an attachment to the next meeting as well, we can make them available, would kind of be my thought. I will say I've not had time to review them. I think they were provided this afternoon.
I just got them this afternoon, yeah.
So I have not had time to actually review those documents yet.
Yeah, just to clarify, so I asked RLIA folks if they had any data on the Mill Pond, and that's where I got it from. Susan Trier had it in her files. So but it's only the JPEGs. It's not an actual Word document or anything. So are we going to discuss that next meeting? Is that the decision? Okay.
I would propose to add that to the agenda to see, and maybe in the meantime, just get an idea of what was going on, what was actually then happened. Because they say, I don't know where this came, where it went.
Yeah.
I gotta believe, as someone commented, that it has to be somewhere in the public record, because it was from Steve to the council, and I don't know exactly why it went to Patricia first and where she annotated it, but I do think we ought to just look into it and see what actually happened and from there. But there is a number of comments in here that I think would be germane to our discussion and recommendations.
Can that document that you're holding be an attachment for the next meeting too? I'm sure you've seen it, but I want to make sure I am looking at what you all both have now.
I can forward to him, but I wasn't sure. I just got it, so I sent it to
Okay.
Tim and to Eric, and I can just send it. Perhaps I should send it to Madison to have her
It should just, she can upload it
formalize and send it to you guys.
for the next agenda. It can be an agenda item. and-
Okay. But you
I'll have-
probably want to see it before then.
Well, sure. If it goes in with the agenda item, I'll see it when I'm preparing
In
for the
time.
meeting. Yep.
You're much faster than I am. I know.
Okay.
Yes, but yes, the request to have it given to everyone and in the agenda, I think is wise. And maybe, I don't know who sent it to you, Mike?
Susan Trier is the chairman of the RLIA.
Okay, so the Rock Lake Improvement Association, and I'm just wondering if we should maybe follow up with Patricia too as to what happened to her recommendations and
I'll
annotations.
go back to her and just ask her on that if you'd like.
Yeah,
But
so we can put
somebody
that,
else will look into the city files.
put it into the files and make sure we have it on the agenda. Thank you.
So as far as kind of making sure that we're moving forward, we we've kind of collected a bunch of information about the mill pond and the history. We got public input at the last meeting, and it sounds like I would obviously like to review that before the next meeting too. I feel like we should, to make sure we're moving forward, try to like complete the information gathering portion of our decision making. Is there any other, I guess, items that the Parks Board would like to have presented to us, or I guess any informational bits that we want before we move on to the kind of decision making part?
Just so I'm clear, we're going to hold in abeyance any idea of dealing with the Ferry Drive Bridge, because that, raising that and where the culvert is, that's a whole different issue, correct?
It is included in the Strand feasibility study, so I would consider it to be a portion of this, or an option for your review as well. So since it's included in that Strand study, I would consider it to be a potential recommendation that Parks Board could review.
Okay, but would be couched with conditional phrases such as if the council considers it worth the money, and depending on the economic issues involved with raising that bridge.
Yep, so just let me clarify, I would say Parks Board needs to determine what their priorities are, what they would like to see for the mill pond. The Ferry Drive Bridge is a component of that by default in the Strand feasibility study. If I can put in simple terms, for the most part, what Parks Board members are tasked with is providing to City Council what they would like to see in a maintenance plan, continued development of the mill pond. And I definitely do want to reiterate that the Ferry Drive, I suppose, culvert or bridge is a portion of that. Hopefully that kind of clarifies a little bit for the most part. So my recommendation would be, what does Parks Board want to see with the mill pond is a very, very broad overview. Dredging may or may not be a Parks Board recommendation to City Council, and in a very 10,000 foot view of this entire project. But I do think Parks Board members need to figure out what it is that you want to see. What is your goal in this? As officials in this board, you need to figure out what your priorities are and therefore make a recommendation to City Council. So I'm not sure where people's goals currently lie with all of the information that you have been provided. If you're missing any gaps in information, like McCrea said, please request it and it can be presented and taken into consideration. But I think at this point, the goal needs to be determined as far as what direction Parks Board would like to take with that recommendation. And I think that's a very high level decision with all the things that are in the aspect of the mill pond itself. But I would say that would be the absolute priority for Parks Board to figure out what is your ideal vision of the mill pond.
Yeah, so I guess I'd like to review this memo before the next meeting, and then I don't know if that needs to be, I mean, obviously this is a recurring agenda item, but I don't know, a specific agenda item for discussion of the maybe pros and cons of each option listed out in the Strand report. I don't think we'll make a final decision next meeting, but at least kind of start that conversation just to make sure we're still moving forward.
Maybe it would be easier to direct it if we had a list of options, like the whole mill pond, or a channel within the mill pond from the fire station to the bridge, including side lights, if you will, alleys to the owners, and then of those, say,
And we could pull those specifically out of the Strand report. I mean, those are in the Strand report in the different renditions. So maybe what we want to do is work towards saying forced choice in, out, definitely, one option, do nothing, to the other option is do the complete high-end recommendation that the Strand report had in there, and start narrowing it down. So we're working on, these are the two most viable options, given all the other things, given the expense, given access, given all the data we've got. I think that would be a course of action that would move us forward to start eliminating things. And then with that, being able to move forward as to what our best options would be for recommendation. Is that something that works for, and looking at people saying, yes, that would probably be a good idea to, on the next meeting or so, make sure we're looking at, here's the options, which is, or one are definitely off the table, and, justification as to why, and then go the other route.
Yeah, so looking at what the report has, one thing that we can just kind of scratch off because it's done as of this week is the Mill Pond Channel dredging. That's, already complete. So I guess I'm seeing, if we take that out, the options are Mill Pond, which that is the one that's the whole active, like, part of the Mill Pond that's water currently, the 50-foot channel, or I guess nothing. Those are the three options listed in the report, if I'm looking at it correctly.
So there was the entire mill pond, which is currently water. So nobody's talking about the whole mill pond, which includes all the
Nope.
rush.
Just the
Nobody's
surface
talking
water.
about
Underwater.
cattails.
The 50-foot channel, and what was the third one?
Just nothing.
Nothing.
Leaving it
Okay,
as
sorry.
If I could clarify, that OPCC, which is the opinion of projected cost document that we looked at a couple meetings ago, does outline some of the potential options in the Strand study. And the nice thing about that is it's just one page and lists them as line items, so it's a little bit easier to navigate than the entirety of the Strand document. So in that OPCC, we should have those line items listed.
So Eric, could you have that maybe sent extra or just as a separate document to everybody so they have it for the next meeting?
It should be, I forget what the actual meeting was to where we went over it, but it was a previous agenda attachment item.
Okay, so we can find that, just
Yep,
something to,
it is available if you would like it set supplementally, absolutely can. So not an issue, but I will say it has been presented as an attached item in agenda before.
Okay.
So if it's accessible, please take a look at that, purely for the form of being easier to navigate as far as finding the line items.
and then, McCrea, what were the pages that you were referencing in that Strand report?
this is, good question. It would be page 1, 2, 3. That is what Eric was just referring to, I believe. You were talking about the updated cost estimates, correct?
Yes, it was a one-page document. Yes, that is correct. Yep, so this is the document that I was referencing. Like I said, if we do go through this document, the channel, purely the channel, which is the Mill Pond channel, is a crossed-off line item that is complete. The channel and Mill Pond by default can also be crossed off, so that leaves us with actually, let me see here, 4 available options. And the reason there's 4 is because there is the inclusion of the Ferry Drive Bridge on that.
Okay.
Were you able to find the page numbers on that?
1, 2, 3. Page 4 of the Strand report just lists off the cost estimates, but we have the updated cost estimates that Eric was just
Okay,
referring
all right.
to.
I just want to make it easy for people to find it, because it's not easy to find some of the stuff in that document. So thank you.
This one, what you mean, page 4. Right. Okay.
Any other discussions, recommendations on the next steps regarding the fulfilling City Council Resolution 2341A? Hearing none?
Sorry, one question. I think we had, when we were talking about next steps back in either November, December, we were talking about possibly having a second public hearing once we develop our recommendation. I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly, but I guess I'm just curious, like, if that would be necessary, because City Council would be having a public hearing, I'm assuming, on this, or at least, discussing it at a meeting, Eric.
They could have a public hearing. We also always have a public comment portion. I think it's at the discretion of both boards what they want to do.
Yeah, so if that's an agenda item, when Parks Board does make their recommendation and goes to city council for review, it'll be an attached agenda item, it'll be discussion point. Public will be notified or at least able to view what's on that agenda, and at that point, they can speak during public comment regarding that actual
You're talking
agenda
about our
item.
agenda, the Parks Board agenda.
I'm talking about the city council
City Council
agenda.
agenda, okay.
Yep, correct.
So is the answer, we don't think we need to have a public comment specifically to our recommendations as a Parks Board?
Yes, that was my thought.
All right. I would agree with that. All right. Anything else regarding the recommendations or next steps on the Resolution 2341A? The, one more thing is are we going to, in the March meeting, are we looking to have any other input from this limnologist, this freshwater person? Are we looking at anyone from the DNR? Are we looking at anyone that's going to come in here and give us any other information?
If there's a specific request as far as information that you purely feel is being omitted or that you don't have, I would say specifically let us know, but as far as a general overview of the mill pond from a DNR representative, I would not think so. So if there's a specific question regarding, like you said, potential levels within the mill pond or water levels or silt levels, that may or may not be information that they can provide, but it has to be somewhat specific of a request for that. I am having difficulty booking a general overview or input from a DNR representative for the mill pond itself. That would be my question. Now, I can't guarantee that a representative from the DNR is going to be here for the March meeting, of course. It's up to their discretion. But that's the general difficulty that I'm having as far as finding someone to schedule and commit to attending a Parks Board meeting is what exactly are they going to be reporting on as far as the information that Parks Board is requesting?
And I'm just going back to what we've learned as we work through this project as to the quality of the water, the sediment issues, the invasive species, and all that. I think it's been noted or has been documented that we're not doing anything that's, radical here as far as the changing the flora and fauna and such of the mill pond. We're not expanding the water size. What we're trying to do is improve, or at least not degrade, what is presently there. So that's my sort of synopsis of what we've heard in the last few months.
Well, I guess at the end of the day, we make our recommendation. Let's say the city council goes with one of the dredging options. The DNR will have to review it all anyway at that point. So I don't know, maybe we don't need to have their final recommendations. They probably won't give it to us until they actually get the city council saying this is what we want to do. And I've kind of been guilty, I think, of wanting to get their input in advance, and maybe that's, in fact, I think that's wrong on my part. It's going to have to be given officially, and if they're anything like the bureaucrat I was, they're not going to give you an official answer until you give them an official question. That's one of the primary rules.
I think you are absolutely correct, Mike. From my both permit requesting and permit approving experience regarding the waterway stuff, I would say that we need to figure out the absolute scope of this project, what it is that we are hoping to do, what it is that we are writing the permit for, given the line items that are proposed. At that point, a permit will be drafted and submitted, and then it is subject to DNR review, and we will figure out what the approval processes are necessary at that point. I will kind of reiterate that is a fairly lengthy and substantial process regarding the actual permit authoring of that, and there will be substantial DNR involvement for review of that permit. So what it is that they're specifically going to be investigating, I'm not quite sure, but I absolutely anticipate they're going to be doing the soil sedimentation samples, vegetation samples, and reviewing, et cetera.
I have a question, I put it out there, and it doesn't have to have a direct response, because I don't want to get anybody put on the spot. I'm going to guess that the city council has a pretty good idea of what we can afford and what the council has a stomach for paying for, given all the projects that we have going on. And was brought up by Mr. Temperlin as to some of the projects coming on. So to me, it might be helpful if the council can kind of give us an idea what their kind of budget is, because to me, it doesn't make much sense to recommend something that you know they aren't going to improve. But again, I don't know if that's how the government works, but I'm just saying, I don't want to propose something, they're going to say, not going to happen. So we can narrow, the more we can narrow it down to help us help them, I think that would help everybody.
Here's my thought. Of course, the financial aspect is within the scope of this recommendation as well. It should absolutely be taken into consideration. But if a recommendation is made this year, you're looking at a fairly substantial budgeting process and request process for the funds to be allocated for this project. So I highly anticipate that it would not be within the same calendar year. I mean, I don't know if referendum would be an option or if that would be pursued, but there will be grant application processes involved in this. There will be DOT potential involvement via TAP grants for a potential Ferry Street Drive project. The fund requesting and budgeting process for a project of this, magnitude would be a fairly large undertaking in and of itself. I don't know if that kind of helps clarify some things at least.
Well, it does, and thank you, Eric. I guess one of my thoughts is that I want to do something for the people of the city of Lake Mills, and especially the people that use the mill pond regularly or live on the mill pond, in that this has been something that has been looked at and analyzed for going on 8 years, and I would just like to see something done that would help with their needs and the needs of the city. So
Perhaps then an option is if you are presenting to city council for your recommendation, you could provide a large in advance full scope of the project recommendation or a long-term goal for the mill pond itself. And then there could also be a smaller, sooner achievable goal just to kind of restore or improve current access. That's a much smaller financial responsibility. So maybe we could have a 2-tier recommendation from Parks Board to City Council would be a thought of mine.
that's just mine. I'll put it out to the other members of the Parks Board. Is that something that this sort of 2-tier approach would be something that we should analyze and maybe propose?
Yeah, I think the kind of short-term and long-term goals would be a phenomenal way to, I guess, give a recommendation. I think, the current condition, something to address the current condition of the mill pond would, that'd be, something short-term, and then obviously something as large as if we were to recommend reconstructing the Ferry Drive Bridge. That'd obviously be a longer-term project.
It's sort of covered, it seems to me. The 50-foot channel that we're talking about, varying depths, would be the short term. And then anything bigger, is putting docks downtown, et cetera, which there's probably no point, I would think, unless we find out that the smaller boats do something. That could be the longer term. So maybe this is just sort of naturally folding into that.
I would say, at least in my opinion, the distinction between shorter and longer term, I would say make the distinction between restoring access and improving access would kind of be my recommendation on how to look at this.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the Strand report and the depths of the dredging and the ability to navigate, because any of us have ever been on the mill pond, and if you get off the main channel and by the end of the year, trying to get through the lily pads and get through it gets thick. So I think any of those things we want to consider as to what we could do to improve navigation not just from the docks and the landing areas to the bridge and the channel, but just for the people that are, accessing it from their homes or from their businesses, or from the launch area that's over there by Bartles Beach. I think all those things would be, at least should be considered. Again, and I apologize, Eric, you said one, either to remedial or improved.
I said restore access and improve access. I think that's kind of the way that I've been looking at this project. And those would be the two goals, I think, that at least I've been looking at when I'm looking at information for this. So restore access versus improve access.
Okay, I think that's a good distinction. I think we could maybe work towards making a recommendation to either one of those fronts, right? And the costs and the time frame for those. So thank you for that clarification. Any other comments before we close item number C, new business? All right. Are there any specifics that we need besides what we've already commented? So what are we going to have at our next agenda to help us with the formulating the next steps, the concrete steps?
From my recollection, at least, it was the review and attachment of the Patricia Cicero note with Steve Wilkie provided from Susan Schreiner.
Okay, that's one.
I think that was one document. The other one is I can also take a look at Fort Atkinson's access for the VFW there. I have written as one of the potential notes, and then the resending of the OPCC document, which kind of lists the line items of available options. So I have three things that I currently count as far as attachments. The OPCC document, OPCC, and yes, and if I am missing anything, please let me know.
Your additional photos, we were going to attach those to the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the additional photos, and I apologize, I couldn't get all three of these, but I got the depths of the mill pond from 2017 and 2022, and it showed the difference, depths, which ones went up and which ones went down in that 5-year period. So I think something like that would be,
That was Jefferson County, right, Tim?
I believe so, that we got from Colton. Yeah, Colton from Jefferson County
Yep.
sent us that.
So if I can confirm, and if Mike, if you can reiterate in the minutes, from my count then, we have 4 stated additional attachments. I'm actually going to add 5, being the 2023 updated aerial with the sand that I mentioned versus the sediment attachments. So the first one I have here is seeing if I can find any additional information on Fort Atkinson's VFW access. That is a potential attachment if I can get information. The second one being the correspondence from Patricia Cicero and Steve Wilkie document that Mike provided. The third attachment being the OPCC document.
And what do you, OPC, you said?
That is opinion of projected project cost. Opinion of projected project cost or probable project cost. The fourth attachment being Tim's mill pond level data or images. And then the fifth being the 2023 updated aerial that shows potential sand infiltration. That is the 5 potential attachments that I have for review for the March meeting.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. So, McCrea, does that work for you as far as actionable items?
Yeah, do we need to have a specific agenda item for, discussion of pros and cons or for the Strand feasibility study, where this kind of follow under the general, I guess, I don't know, do we have a general?
My opinion is it would kind of fall under our current agenda item C. I think if that's just a recurring agenda item, it would by default fall under that one.
Thank you. If there aren't any comments more on item C, we'll move to 6D, discussion recommendations on introducing an ordinance to the city council regarding Parks Board meeting times. And specifically, this was to be Mondays at 5:30, if I recall.
So I'll give a bit of a background. It is city staff's opinion or recommendation that Parks Board continues by default, like the other boards and commissions do, to have recorded meetings that are referenceable. So residents can be informed, they can go back, review documents, et cetera. So the intent of filming these meetings was to fulfill that role. This council chambers provides the easiest opportunity to do that. That's user-friendly. I get it's kind of a different venue that some of us are used to, but for city staff involvement, this is exponentially easier for us to facilitate. That being said, our current meeting date and time does not work to have regularly occurring meetings to happen in this council chambers. If we want to have our own designated time and date for Parks Board to continue in this room, it would be the second Monday of the month, would be the proposed date. Now, time, I am open to whatever. I think 5:30 is fine. I think by default, people are used to 5:30 for this meeting, but I am proposing the date change for that. This is, like I said, the only really available day that there's consistent non-bookings in this room, so it would be by default accessible. Prior to this meeting, I did just speak with Attorney Drescher. We may be able to remove the requirement for 3 ordinance readings for this. I'll have to confirm with him and talk later, but by default, if there's an ordinance change, it requires city council member sponsorship and 3 recurring city council readings of that ordinance. So it would take multiple meetings at city council for this to be enacted if that's the case. I will confirm with him to see if this is a potential waiver, if we can remove that requirement, but that I can't confirm yet. But I am proposing the second Monday of the month.
So it would, if I can just follow up on Eric's
Yes.
comment, if it takes 3 readings, that's 3 meetings. If we were to make a recommendation at this meeting, would it hit the next city council meeting? So that would be March 5th.
I have, if that is the case, to where this would come up at the next soonest available city council meeting, that would put the first Parks Board meeting in this room at April 8th.
Well,
Could be March 18th.
if it gets 3 readings, you're saying then after that 3rd reading on April 2nd, if it's approved, yes, April 8th. Okay, I see what you're saying, yeah. Otherwise, if it is moved ahead and we do 3 readings or we waive the readings in the first meeting, you could potentially be meeting in this room on March 11th. I will say from a council's perspective, it would be unusual to move forward on the 3 readings in the first meeting. We like to give time for people to be aware of the change and to invite comments.
So likely April 8th.
That's what I would plan on if I was going by what the council usually does.
And that was my understanding as well, Catherine. I'll speak with Attorney Drescher and Drake before the end of the week as well to kind of confirm. But I would think April 8th would also provide adequate time for notice to be given to residents as well. If we determine that it needs to be done immediately, it's another story. But I'll get some confirmation from other city staff as well and keep all the Parks Board members updated.
So for our planning purposes, meaning the Parks Board, we should plan that we will be here on, we'll be in this room on the 20th of March.
That's incorrect. This was actually kind of a fluke that we were able to use this room. Yeah.
Or March,
Yep, there was not a conflict with municipal court just for this evening.
All right.
By default, there is a conflict with municipal court in this room. It just so happened to work out that the room was available for this February meeting. So we will be in council chamber, or community center, I apologize. Community center downstairs until this ordinance is adopted and in place.
So March meeting will be downstairs.
yes.
Okay.
And potentially the April meeting, depending on what we decide or want, will be set up here.
Yep, that's correct. So what I need to basically enact this to move forward is a motion and voting to either approve or deny this recommendation. And then at that point, I believe, like I said, it needs a city council member sponsorship, but that would be after the Parks Board recommendation.
So are we, as a board, prepared to make a motion to move these meetings to the second Monday of the month going forward, or as soon as practical?
My only concern is that, Mondays tend to be holidays more often, but otherwise, if that's what works up here, that's fine with me. I'm retired. Every day is a holiday. Indeed I am.
Some people don't like you when you say that stuff, Mike.
I think the Latin is yan, yan, and yan, yeah.
So professional.
So this is why I wanted to bring it up. Well, obviously I have to, but everybody has lives, obligations, families, duties, responsibilities, etc. I want to have you guys have a proper discussion as far as if that date and time would work for all of you.
I wonder, and I see Catherine, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but to Mike's comment about conflicts with Mondays.
Yes, I just flipped through my calendar for the entirety of this year, even going back to January, and there are no federal holidays noted on the second Monday in any of these months, for this year at least. I don't know about future years, but.
I'm fine with Mondays. I mean, it's up to you guys.
Yeah, Mondays work just as fine as Wednesdays do for me.
And
As long as it's not a Friday.
Yeah, I think that, the Mondays, if for city staff, for recording, for just consistency, I think that moving it to where we could have access to this room would be a wise move and request to the city council.
The next thing to do, and I know Dave's listening in, perhaps he can correct me if I'm wrong, but using this room, if we do decide to use Skype access or Zoom access, I apologize, I assume we are able to do that in this room. The community center, we did attempt to do that when you were absent at the time. It's just not conducive. It didn't work fantastic. So this would also give us an opportunity to where if someone is not able to attend in person, they can attend remotely. I will say that's very important for myself. I like having that opportunity to do that. And I think it's beneficial.
I have one question. I find it harder to hear and understand people through the microphone. I'm assuming that it's going to be much easier. I think, am I alone in that? Or you guys don't really find that? Okay, time to bring the hearing aids out. No, they're at home where they do a lot of good. Okay, so I guess I make a motion.
Yeah, if we're always here, we could stash your secondary hearing aids in the back room.
That's a thought. That's a thought. Well, I would make a motion then that we ask City Council to change our regular meetings to the second Monday of each month, 5:30 in City Council chambers.
I'll second.
Excellent. Thank you for doing the work on that too, Eric.
And then we have to vote on that?
Yes, so do we have, I vote yea.
Duh.
All right, thank you. Moving to item number 7 on the agenda, announcements, and then recommendations for future agendas. Actually, if I could be so allowed, I'd like to change it to talk about recommendations for future agendas. Because one, and I thought I had it in this one, but it's not here, is that I think we should come up with some sort of process for knowing who is going to be attending and who's not going to be attending. So you either letting the chair know or letting Eric know, but letting us know who's going to be here and who's not going to be here, to the best of your ability. I mean, things happen, but I just think we should have a process for it, and that way we get some clarity, some expectations.
My thoughts are just on the city staff end of it. I absolutely agree, Tim. What would be easiest for city staff to document an absence is if you know you're going to be absent, please notify us as early as possible in advance. And please include 3 recipients in an email. That would be myself, Tim as chair, and Madison Myers as deputy clerk. Would be the three contacts to send an email to. And Tim. Yep. So it would be something as simple as send it to Tim, but copy Madison and myself, and just so we're aware. And if it's 6 months in advance, you're going to be gone on vacation that's booked that date, please let us know. If not, something came up, family emergency, you're going to be gone tomorrow evening for a meeting, just send a message. I think that would be fine and sufficient.
Yeah, especially with the issue of quorum and stuff, I just think it's going to help us with going in the future. So, given that recommendation for a future agenda, we all okay with putting that in, and we'll get some more details as to the process, and we can vote on it at the next meeting. Not going back to the announcements then, and I don't know, we do have an announcement that Bernie is going to be resigning from the board. Yeah, so just be aware of that. I don't know what the procedure is from Lisa to get us another board member and what the time frame is, but just be aware of that's what's happening.
Tim, so I did speak with Lisa today. We kind of touched base regarding Bernie's absence. It's not due to uninvolvement in the board or non-passion projects, et cetera. It's family emergencies aspect, so it's just the time obligation she's not able to commit to. But speaking with Lisa, she does have a recommendation for a member to appoint, and she will be contacting them fairly soon to see if they'd be interested in fulfilling an open spot.
Okay. And you might want to make that person and Lisa aware that we're looking to have these on Mondays, so they're aware of that for planning purposes. Any other announcements? I have one, and we're going to do this process, is that I will not be here at the next meeting. Betsy had something come up, so we're going to be doing something different on that week of the 17th or whatever, the week of the 20th that is, so.
All right, it sounds like I'm leading that one.
You're leading that one, McCrea.
This is next month, March.
March, yes, we will be gone the 20th of March. And any other announcements?
Do you want me to put the agenda together, or will you put the agenda together for next meeting?
How about we work together on putting said agenda together in the process?
Yes.
And now you probably know this, but they want, Madison and Eric wanted to them at least a week to 10 days before it goes in.
Okay.
All right, so yes, we can work that together. Good question. Any other announcements? All right, if no announcements, next meeting is 5:30.
Did you recommend future agendas, or did we cover that basically under the talking about? We didn't really do recommendation for future agenda unless it was.
Oh, I just did my part about adding the process for,
Right, okay.
but if there's any other ones, please add them, Mike.
I don't have that, just to know.
Yeah, the only one besides our normal ones and what we have on our list here are just that we want to have a discussion on the notification process. Because right now we're at a quorum. What's our quorum? We need to have 3 people here.
Yes.
So the next time we'll have 3 people here. So I just want to make sure we're
Bernie will not be here effective today.
correct.
Well, so she may not be here, but she hasn't to my knowledge, submitted her resignation, so she's still technically a Parks Board member until
Tech-
she submits her resignation.
Yep, you're right, Catherine. She has full intent to resign effective immediately, but she does still have to submit her official resignation to Lisa, from my understanding.
So until that happens, you have to count a quorum of 5. What is that? It's 3. If it was 4, it's the same, but just, yeah.
Good clarification. So any other comments regarding the future agendas?
If I may make one comment, actually, more of an announcement. I don't know if this will qualify, but if you guys recall last year when we had the self-service kayak rentals that went before Parks Board at Sandy Beach and then to City Council, I do intend to renew that annual contract with Surf Shack Rentals and Surf Shack Rentals. We discussed it last year at Parks Board and then to City Council. It's self-service kayak rentals at Sandy Beach. I'm not quite sure if it was before your time at Parks Board or not. If it's all okay with you, I plan to take that directly to council to renew that annual contract for 2024 season.
I think if you're seeking our recommendation, that needs to be a separate
Yeah,
agenda item.
I'm just saying I'm going to be taking it to city council to renew that annual contract for Surf Shack Rentals. For your clarification, Mike, this would be the second year to where we have self-service kayak rentals at Sandy Beach. We had it for the 2023 season. I'm proposing, yeah. So, just so you're aware,
All right, thank you. Any other items? If not, at 7:20, we are adjourned. Thank you.